At Trimble, we care about connection. Connecting technology, connecting solutions, connecting you. We're developing an ecosystem for transportation professionals that improves every facet of moving freight. Whether you need to improve safety, efficiency, or compliance, Trimble has you covered with telematics and fleet management, route optimization, asset maintenance, and transportation management. Wherever you're headed, your journey starts with Trimble.
Welcome back to Loaded and Rolling. I'm your host, Thomas Wasson. The topic for today is going to be maintenance and how you can use technology to not only save money, but also save time, helping your fleet out. If you think about it, the past 2, 3, even 4 years have been pretty rough. We had a pandemic high, we have a pandemic low, and we're going to be talking with an expert in terms of how to leverage technology. It's going to be the folks at Trimble. Let's dive right in. Let's welcome on our guest. It's Brian Mulshine. He's a Senior Director of TMT Product Management and Trimble. We're talking about technology. Brian, I feel like you're the man I need to talk to. Welcome on the show.
Hey, thank you so much. Glad to be here.
So let's dive in with an intro. For folks who are unaware, first tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do at Trimble.
At Trimble, I'm the Senior Product Manager for the TMT Solutions, which is our fleet maintenance solutions. But I've been in the industry. I started with Trimble earlier this year. I started in February of this year. But I've been in the industry over 30 years. I've been in large vehicle manufacturers, all the way from field test engine development, all the way up to supporting the dealer network, as well as developing solutions from an OEM level, from remote diagnostics to service communication. I did have a period of time where I went over to a large truck distributor, one of the largest in North America, to help them with their roadmap on breakdown management, telematics, and communication. So I've had a lot of fun in this industry, all focused around maintenance.
To me, it's kind of like tactics versus logistics. And so amateurs think of tactics, the professionals talk logistics. And so maintaining your vehicles and equipment is super, super important. Let's talk about, being in the industry for 30 years, you've seen a lot of changes. Let's talk about some of the impacts that you have seen throughout your career in terms of what has changed. Because it feels like I've been in here about 10 years now. It feels like even in the past 10 years, it's been a little bit wild from all the extra complexities.
No, absolutely. When I think about years back in the mid-90s when electronic engines started launching, I remember taking the first mechanical engines out where they had 3 wires to the engine. You pretty much had a oil pressure, coolant temperature, and a coolant level sensor. That's about it on a vehicle. Now, I remember taking those engines out, which was a sad day. I didn't design it. It's really where we had to go as an industry, and put in electronic engines. And today, if you look at vehicles today, there's up to 5 computers on a vehicle, from the engine, transmission, the braking system, the cab controllers, everything talking together on a data bus, and then also producing up to about 2,000 fault codes that is possible with the combination of computers on the vehicle. So it's really, how do you manage all this?
That's the biggest important question. I think that ties into some of the volatility we're seeing in the market. Let's dive into the volatility, then we'll talk about the technology impact. I think that one of the things is we've seen the past 4 years, we had the pandemic high. 2 years now, we're still in this glut. What are some of the things you're seeing as you're having conversations with folks in the business? Because from my anecdotal experience, it feels like the added complexity means that if you aren't paying attention, it can sneak up on you faster because there's more things to tell you compared to the past when it was a much more simpler thing where you could just fix it on the side of the road or a smaller shop.
No, you're spot on. When you look at the vehicles today, they're becoming more vertically integrated. So the locations where you can get the product supported is now becoming more limited. Where the parts are is where you got to go. When you look at it, the first thing I always look at is operational cost, and where operational cost is nearing 11% of your total revenue for freight movement, and there's about 4.5 service events per year per vehicle. And how do I manage that event? How do I manage the cost? And the cost has climbed almost about 32% over the last 5 years for fleets based on feedback they provided. Now, the goal is how to lean up the operations, how to diagnose the vehicle and get them serviced before they break down on the side of the road, because the vehicles have the information, but now what do you do with the information? How do you implement processes that are smart, and how do you lean up your operations?
I wanted to get your thoughts on PMs and the PM cycles as well. When I managed fleets and ran them, we had BPMs, and we had them in like the green, yellow, red, but it was always a set cycle for a large North American asset-based fleet. Looking into this, especially talking about using the technology and the impact of a good maintenance schedule, are you seeing something where that even these sacred cows, which I'd like to call the 6 or 1 year PM cycle, is that starting to change? And is that something folks need to pay attention to? Because it does feel like added complexity means that not every truck is going to need that cycle at the same time.
No, you're right. And really, when you look at it, it's how you operate the vehicle. And you could have a fleet that you're operating that has vehicles that are on different conditions. Some that are hauling heavy, some are hauling half, loads one way and empty the back. You're going to have different requirements. And with the engines today, they've put more oil, more filter technology, and the costs. And now vehicle manufacturers are starting to come out with very proprietary oil. And that's a challenge. In fact, I've had calls recently as of this week. Hey, Brian, how do we approach this? Because some vehicle manufacturers are saying you got to use this type of oil, and some truck stops don't have it. But really, it's how do you manage this? How do you drive the complexity out, and how to standardize? But today, it's how I can leverage the oil changes, because the cost of oil changes are going up. But you can't stop and think about it. You got to still inspect the vehicle. The vehicles today are getting closer to 75,000 mile drain intervals on a normal operation, fuel economy running around 8 miles per gallon. If you're running heavy, that's out the window. But if you're getting good fuel economy, you can see north of 75,000 mile oil drain intervals on a Class 8 truck. Now, when you're doing that, you still want to stop the truck and get the vehicles, I call it a dry service. You still have to inspect the vehicles, because there's too many other points between belts fraying and brakes and wheel seals that you still got to pay attention to.
And I guess it also kind of goes down into even the pre-trip inspections, understanding, educating drivers on how these are more technologically advanced units. Do you ever have anything talking about best practices? One of the problems I kept running into was the filtration, the NOx, in terms of either the vehicles were not getting at enough speed to burn it off, or they were excessively idling the vehicle, causing this clogging, and then you had to do a regen. Is that something where this technology and having a good technology platform can help you find that? Because I swear, like when I was at US Express, there were idling restrictions, fleet-wide idling restrictions to fix this. We had APUs. When I started at a startup, half of my trucks were just regenning because we didn't have all of that. They were just idling these things excessively. Is that one of those things you need to pay attention to as well?
Yeah, I think with all the no idle solutions that have been pushed out in the market, and the requirements of shutting down with CARB, shutting down the engine, I think that's helped you on the DPF filter plugging concerns. And I think a lot of people have got over that concern, have gotten better. I'm sure somebody on this that's going to listen to this saying, no, they're still having challenges, but it really depends on your application and not loading up the vehicles. But what I was shocked to see is the extended intervals that vehicle manufacturers are starting to get to. They're getting over 350,000 miles before you have to service the DPF. And I've seen close to 400,000. So it's now starting to get to where the first owner in a Class 8 truck are now getting to the trade-out cycle before the first time they get the need to service it. The ones that are having to service it earlier, a lot of that is coming from there's a downstream problem. There's something that's driving the concern, and it may not be a service interval concern. It's more of there's another issue with the vehicle, and a lot of people don't pay attention to the telltale sign. You're loading because of another issue, and that's what you got to pay attention to.
I like the point, because that's the second thing I'm thinking about here, is that the new technology has allowed these trucks to go longer. Talked about 350 to 400,000 for the depth of filtration systems, but you also said 75,000 miles on the oil drain. Was that something that it used to be like 50 or 30 or what?
I remember 25, 30 in my day, and but now they're running 52 quarts of oil. You're running synthetics. You're running much larger filters. So the cost of the oil drain interval is going up. In fact, I think about taking my daughter's car this week over to, she had an oil change due, and I took care of her. I couldn't get over the cost of an oil change. It was double what I'm used to. but that's all because of the synthetics and the new filters, even in the automotive side. So there is a benefit, but you got to make sure you leverage the strategy. And if we have an opportunity to talk about the new VMRS Code Key that was just balloted through TMC, it gets exciting because in the future you're going to see better optimization off the engine data.
Let's talk about this code thing, because I think that's something that it's going to also tie into the fact that we're going to see Phase 3 EPA Model 27 ruling. We're going to have, looking at the X15N engine released by Cummins for natural gas. It looks like this new code system is going to go hand in hand with newer developments. Tell us a little bit about this development.
Yeah, no, when I think about this, I was with a large vehicle manufacturer, and I remember an engineer all excited saying, hey, we're going to go ahead and let you optimize the oil drain intervals based on the operating condition of the driver and the engine and the vehicle. I'm like, great, well, how are you going to inform the fleet? Well, we're going to turn a light on the dash. I'm like, that's not going to work. That's not how a fleet's going to operate. They need to have the back-end systems, and that's really what led me here to Trimble, because it was just the perfect opportunity to how do we actually take data and work with vehicle manufacturers on data they have and help our customers optimize maintenance on the vehicle. Because the vehicle manufacturers are coming out with strategies, but they got to really work with the fleet management system providers to make sure we're leveraging the data so the customer can take advantage of it. Because the customers do not want lights on the dash. They need to get away from that and focus more on keep the driver focused on what they do best and let the back-end systems manage the maintenance. And that's what we do here at Trimble with TMT.
I like that as well. I had that problem when I managed fleets was if you had the wrong type of system, or you had to go through, like, look at even a lease, like a Penske truck or a Ryder truck. They had their own system, and then maybe if you got your own truck, you're like combining systems. It didn't always tell you what was important, because I'd get these fault codes as well, filtrations, def levels, engine oil levels. And as a fleet manager who's not as well versed in maintenance, it could get a little overwhelming. And how do I explain that to the driver? I think that's really cool what y'all are working on. So that's providing the context, is like what's important and having the convo.
Yeah, and you mentioned a couple of large leasing companies, and pretty much most of the major fleets and a lot of the customers you just mentioned were a part of this new VMRS Code Key 25, which is maintenance indication alerting, where instead of waiting for a light to go on the dash, the vehicle is able to broadcast the intervals based on what they're seeing, the calculations coming out, so people can start handshaking the data. This is all brand new, but it's the foundational elements that are being established today, so we're ready for the future to optimize vehicle performance when it comes to maintenance.
And I think that I want to segue into this because I'm seeing a larger trend. I've seen this on the safety front with telematics on driver behaviors going from reactive to proactive. Is this something you've seen in your 30 years plus of experience, is that as maintenance departments are also getting this to where if I'm a frontline ops guy, my maintenance person is now proactively able to reach out to me and say, Thomas, this may be a problem, instead of saying, Thomas, shut him down right now, or this is going to blow up and then I get in big trouble.
Yeah, it's actually, that can go two different ways. I think about on the standard maintenance intervals, we're doing a lot of work to try to drive where the transportation management solution, where dispatch and operations is working with the driver, there has to be better coordination from the TMS side of the business. So this way they can know when the driver is doing a reset, what is really required on that vehicle when I do have the vehicle down for a period of time. And there has to be better coordination with the software providers out there by leveraging the data from the fleet management system, or we call the AMS, the asset management system. How do we make sure that the asset maintenance is provided to the TMS side so we can optimize the time that the vehicle is down? Now, in the event of a critical fault that's happening while they're on the road, there has to be streamlined processes there. And that's where even some vehicle manufacturers and engine manufacturers are coming out with, I call it proactive repair strategies. And we want to work with them to actually induce it into the system so it goes into a workflow. Today, it's coming out to fleets as an email, and we need to move it to a workflow.
And like looking at workflows, that was one thing that I struggled with. Was I diagnose it at maybe a mobile service unit or a Love's, TA, a truck stop. Then they would say, hey, look, we can't do this. We need to go to the dealership. Then I got to deal with the dealer's work order stuff. And if the dealer has a spot. So is that kind of the future where the OEMs and the dealer, like if I got a Volvo or like a Cascadia with Daimler, we can eventually integrate that and say, hey, I see that you've shot a rod through your thing. Here, let's start a work order real quick so I can pull you in.
I really think a lot of the OEMs are doing a great job focusing on leveraging the data and proactively working with fleets. I know of certain fault codes they do. All OEMs have their subset of fault codes that they do monitor, and they can trigger a proactive strategy to get a hold of the fleet, say, let's get that vehicle in. And I know of many circumstances where vehicle manufacturers have been doing that. So now it's more, how do we scale this up, I'll call it? How do we scale it into the workflow? And I think we're right now setting foundational elements that will allow that capability.
And looking at things like tires and other pieces of equipment, one of my big roadside problems where we'd be going, I had drivers that lived in Vegas. They always blew their tires because the tires would get hot, and I'd send them up to like Colorado, and then the altitude would like blow their tires. Yep. Is that something where, so we're looking at there's a lot of progress on the engines itself, the fault codes, identifying. Is there other things that's starting to be developed on more consumable things like your tires and even like oil and stuff like that?
To me, it's multiple faceted, where it's proper maintenance, making sure you're choosing the right provider if you're doing recaps on your drives. I've seen a lot of fleets managing tires better by choosing the right provider for the tires, making sure they get the right product in their fleet. But then also when an event happens, what we've been working on is our new advanced road call solution, where we actually have thousands of tire vendors loaded, where I can see on a map, where's the vehicle now? You want this brand of tire or that brand of tire? I can pull all the vendors that distribute it in that market that's in proximity of the truck. So we're actually trying to find ways to actually streamline the process to get a hold of the right vendors and help our customers get the trucks up and running.
And I'm curious as well, looking at a large fleet and a small fleet with what Trimble's reaching out, because it does feel like when I came from a large fleet, we had very organized processes. We had vendor lists. We were able to do all this cool stuff. Is that something where the goal with these TMS systems in the maintenance front, is that where you want to bridge the gap for a small fleet? Because it was a rude awakening for me. I'm like calling up tire things. It was a very big learning experience compared to when you're cloistered at a large carrier.
Yeah, no, in fact, a lot of our products, we have to scale them appropriately to where some of our solutions will go north and south, I call it. We'll handle the small fleet to the large fleet. And so the larger customers really are driving the strategy. And the way I look at it, our smaller customers are able to leverage the strategy because we have to do this for our customer base. And so other customers are able to leverage the technology. And the one I think about is recently the discovery we made this year with our advanced road call module. We're very proud of our Maps division. Trimble Maps is a significant part of Trimble. And with that division, they had over 5 million points of light of locations in their databases. And that's from Amazon distribution centers, the Targets, the Walmarts, etc. Anywhere freight is going, they have them. Now, the problem is they didn't really look at a categorization of vehicle service locations. So very quickly what we did is we leveraged a Trimble Map solution to drive our new advanced road call solution, because we had the capability of properly digitizing all the vendors in transportation. And now we're working with the vehicle manufacturers and truck stop chains and other towing providers to get the information into a better database. So instead of requiring each one of our fleets to build their own vendor list, we're coming out with a national vendor list to help them manage it. But then we're also working on streamlining to where you can build a work order directly into the vendor from our advanced road call module, so you don't even have to technically call them. We have 3 vendors now that we're directly integrated with.
Man, that's cool. I had that problem all the time. I'd have trailers, a DC, like a Walmart DC would call me and say, Thomas, I need you to pull this trailer out. It has a flat tire. You're in our trailer pool. And I would rather just love it if I could just call somebody and have them send a repair unit out to replace the tire at the location. That was a very hassle. So that's all getting combined. So in a future state, what we're hoping for is I can just pinpoint that DC. The Trimble Map database has that in there. And then it recommends me based on the type who I can go through.
Correct. All the way from towing, tire vendors, trailer vendors are now loading, truck OEMs, engine manufacturers, rental vehicle providers. So if you, like, I have some customers that cannot stop a load. They're like, well, where can I find a replacement vehicle? So we're also loading the replacement vendors as well.
Man, that's cool. That stuff gets me excited because I think one of the biggest challenges, and I'm really happy to talk about how the technology is doing that, is the visibility issue. It's almost like we can map an airport, but good luck. Everyone has their own map of DCs, and they're all geo-fenced in their own little way. So that's kind of the future for maintenance as well as the rest of operations, is having that data source in one point. That's a competitive advantage because I'm saving, I feel like, at least 3-4 hours on dealing with
You're spot on. In fact, our Trimble Maps team, that's what they do for a living. They do all the geofences. But it goes beyond just the geofence. We also look at the egress. Where does a vehicle enter and exit? Because at some locations, if you go down and try to enter the fence this way, you're going to get stuck. You're going to actually have to turn around the truck and go in the other way. So with our solution, we also integrated our advanced road call into PC Miler. So this way you can actually say, my truck is broke, I need to go to this dealer. I can actually click on the dealer, it's 42.6 miles. So when I'm dispatching the tow vendor, I can then audit the towing record because I already have the actual truck legal routing to the vendor I'm going to. So some of the fleets that we're talking about are like, this is going to help them tremendously because they're worried about how do we audit our towing records, and this is providing that capability.
That's one of the small little things that a lot of folks don't appreciate. The miles. I always called PC Miler miles because drivers would get mad. And I was like, look, I pulled up PC Miler. Here's the miles from point A to point B, and they're looking at Google Miles. And so I'm assuming the goal is to have that unified thing, because what if the tow truck purposely takes it out, charges you Google Miles, when in fact you're like, this is the route you should have taken. I'm going to save like $200.
Yep, you're right. Or in fairness, some cases we're going to go on legal truck routing might take you on a road that you cannot drive on through Google. And then what it's going to do, it's going to make sure that you're paying the right fair price. So you might be thinking the vendor's being a crook when actually they went the right way. So it's both ways.
Yeah, also for charging, because I've had issues where we've had to make non-revenue orders to show the movements, or if we're billing a customer, like I have a customer's trailer, then they're going to want to make sure that that mileage is correct and they can trust it instead of me just spitballing something.
Exactly.
Fascinating. Let's look ahead real quick. I hear talks of AI all the time, artificial intelligence, being able to, one person told me, it was a while ago, I spoke to somebody and they said, well, the good news is with all this data we're collecting on the codes, that we can predict when your truck breaks better than a doctor can predict when you're going to get sick. Is that kind of the future we're looking into? Is there some cool insights y'all have learned as you're collecting this data and we're rotating it that, fleets may need to pay attention to? For example, if one part goes down, is there like a higher likelihood of other things, any like cascading things to watch out for?
Absolutely. And really there's patterns. And when you look, I said nearly 2,000 fault codes on a vehicle, but the way I worded, there's about 125 that matter. Really it's watching these 125. And for people that run common make vehicles, if you start watching the data, and many of you do this today, and I want to be careful because so many fleets have taught me this. There are certain fault codes that you see this. It happened, I'll give you the best example. Years ago when the EGR coolers were cracking, you'd first see a low coolant level because the EGR cooler is cracking. You'd see it 32 times at the coolant level. Now all of a sudden you see DPF filter plugging, a level 1, level 2 on the DPF filter. And then all of a sudden people say, oh, my DPF is out. And what they do is they service the DPF, but they forgot about the 42 times that the driver had to fill the coolant level. Because the problem is not the DPF, it was the upstream effect of the EGR cooler leaking coolant that's plugging the DPF. So a lot of the fault codes that are out there will help you drive decisions. But the concern I also have is you really need to work with the vehicle OEM, because many of the vehicle OEMs are starting to get to where it's actually not a problem with the product. It's a calibration issue. I've seen faults that say, do not diagnose this. This is an erroneous fault. We know the issue is there and we have an update coming soon. So you got to be very careful that you work to understand the faults, because sometimes it could be a false positive, but also there's patterns with the faults. There's usually never one fault on a vehicle. There's faults that'll lead up to what the root problem is usually driven by another concern.
And I'm excited, especially, we got about 2 minutes left here. For the smaller fleets and the larger fleets, higher out of service percentages is something that we're noting. Folks being concerned about, especially more rigorous road checks and stuff. Getting started. If I want to find out, I have a small fleet, I have a truck. How would you get in contact, or even like with Trimble, to start this process, get it all integrated, and try to help save some money?
Yeah, I think reaching out to Trimble, go to our website. We have a lot of great resources on there. When you look at Trimble, we're a very vast company. We have 90%, when you look at our maps division and our TMS, 90% of the most carriers utilize products that we offer. If I look at the maintenance solutions with TMT, our TMT maintenance solutions, we're a significant player. About 40% of the top 100 carriers use TMT for managing their business and growing. So what you got to do is take a look at the product, and also if you want, reach out to me, send me an email, Brian Mulshine, Brian_Mulshine at Trimble.com, and we'll get you aligned with our support team that's phenomenal at supporting our customers. And also we do a number of webinars with our customers to help them understand the strategy on how to drive their cost out.
Well, it's some really great details. Brian, thanks so much for coming on the show. We're definitely going to have you all on soon. This is the fun stuff. Everyone needs to hear more of it when the rubber meets the road. It's not just having loads, but when the load messes up or your truck messes up, you've definitely got to find a way to fix it. Thanks so much for coming on.
No, thank you very much. Take care.
That's going to be a wrap for this show, but if you're just joining us, we will be on demand, Apple, YouTube, and Spotify. If you like the content, I have the Loaded and Rolling newsletter. It goes out Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern. Actually, that's Thursdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. You can catch these shows Tuesdays at 2. It's a 2 p.m. Eastern thing with a Tuesday or Thursday. You got the T, you got it right. Go check out the folks at Trimble. Amazing products. I can recommend it. I use their mapping stuff as a load planner all the time. Give them a shout. That's going to be it for this show, but a lot more great stuff coming up. Join us next week. We'll do it live.